Views and news with Clarence Ford.
Welcome back. It is nearly 9:35. Views and news through till 12 o'clock. It is Friday. A very important appointment that we have with, of course, a lecturer at the University of Cambridge every Friday. Dr. Chris Smith joins us. He's the naked scientist. He joins us to answer your questions. And again, you can drop your questions that you need answering via WhatsApp on 072-567-1567. Your call anytime at 021-446-0567. Get it in, and we'll go to the questions in a short while. Welcome, Dr. Chris Smith. Great to have you back.
Morning, Clarence. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I was excited to learn that we may have another interstellar visitor.
Yeah, I saw that story as well. It was on the front pages of some of our newspapers this morning. So I'm glad you raised that because I was intrigued. I watched it, a white light streaking across the sky. This is an incomer from outside of our solar system, we're told. Telescopes have spotted this, moving very, very fast, measuring about 12 to 15 miles, so 20 kilometres across. Travelling very fast, probably a comet, possibly an asteroid, and will get about 150 million miles. So that'll be about 250 million odd kilometres away from the Earth. So it's about 40% further away from the Sun than the Sun is. They don't know exactly what it is yet, but its identity will become clearer as it gets closer to the Sun, because if it is a comet, then heat from the Sun will cause the materials on the comet surface to begin to boil off, and this produces the so-called coma that you see, where a comet appears to inflate in the sky because of the material ejecting from the surface and then becoming a big reflective cloud that makes the comet look much bigger, which is why comets loom large as they get closer to the Sun. The ultimate fate of this thing is actually to leave the solar system again. So we think it's just coming through, passing through, and will then disappear later on in the year. But it's probably one of many objects that have been doing this for a long, long time, and we've never spotted them before because we didn't really have the power to see them. Some people have said, is this an alien spacecraft? Probably not. I don't think if they had the ability to get here, they would display and disclose themselves quite so readily as this. I think they'd probably be a bit more respectful of our cosmic neighbourhood. But we watch and wait. Watch this space, as they say.
So essentially another Oumuamua, is it?
Possibly, yeah.
Oumuamua left us with a lot of questions.
Yeah, it did. Oumuamua, you've been doing your homework. I'm very impressed. Oumuamua was around, that was about 6 years ago. And this was a big sort of cigar-shaped object, and they called it Oumuamua. It's actually Hawaiian because the guys who spotted it first were in Hawaii. And this one, also, because of its bizarre shape, like a long cylinder, people said, whoa, is this an alien spacecraft? Again, an incomer from deep space. Don't know if Oumuamua actually came from outside our solar system, though. It might just have been an object that was on a very, very eccentric orbit, was way out in the Kuiper belt or something, Oort cloud possibly, and then got dragged in gravitationally. This one, they speculate it probably did come because of the trajectory, size, etc. Probably did come from interstellar space. But we'll watch this space, and we'll certainly learn more the closer it gets, because we'll begin to get better pictures of it. Amateur astronomers should be able to see this one coming in because it will be sufficiently close that you can point your amateur gear at it and get quite good pictures. And we'll be able to see from the light that it reflects some of what it's made of, which will be really interesting as time goes on.
And you will alert us about maybe getting our lives in order if it is E.T. But for now, I think is another question in. There has been lots of activity in the Ring of Fire in the Pacific Ocean. In fact, one part of that Pacific Ocean has recorded 3 times more seismic activity of late. Is this a kind of cycle of such activity or not?
Well, the Ring of Fire is so named because this is the margin of the Pacific where the plate, which is the floor of the Pacific Ocean, is being subducted under the continental crust of the land masses that flank the Pacific. Because you have seafloor spreading from a mid-ocean ridge, you make more seafloor. The seafloor is trying to get bigger, which is why it's being swallowed up by the continental crust where the ocean meets the land. And where you get one plate being subducted under another, you get friction, you get melting, and you get volcanic activity. And the plates, the tectonic plates, are continuously jockeying for position all over the Earth all the time, and they are moving all the time. Therefore, you have got these heating effects happening all the time. You therefore have a source of volcanic activity all the time. But what tends to happen is it's not a smooth process. You'll get fits and starts of activity because you'll build up some pressure, you'll build up some energy, and then you'll release some of that energy. So it's a gradual progressive process, but it does tend to go in fits, starts and burps to an extent. And there will be periods where it appears to intensify and then relax for a bit for all these reasons. There's a degree of randomness to this, but there's also a degree of predictability in the sense that the physics and the geology that's driving it is a constant, but it's constantly varying. So you don't see it happening in a constant rate all the time. You see blips like this.
A medical question from Lana. Is leukemia genetic? In the last 4 years, my grand died from it. My uncle died from it this week, and my 36-year-old cousin was just diagnosed with it in the past 2 months, all on my mom's side of the family.
Oh, Lana, I'm so sorry to hear your story. The answer is that leukemia is a kind of cancer. It's a cancer of the blood, and specifically the white blood cells. That's why it's called leuko. Leuko means white, the white blood cells. And all cancers have genetic problems. The reason cancer happens is because there are genes which would normally control the way cells behave, which have been damaged or have changed their function, and as a result, the cells begin to grow out of control. Now, in some cases, we accrue that genetic damage because of exposure to things in the environment. For instance, a person who smokes cigarettes is putting chemicals into the lungs and also into the rest of the body, actually, which have the ability to damage DNA and can cause some of these changes that then turn into a lung cancer. Under other circumstances, a person exposed to the human papillomavirus might have a virus that causes cells to develop genetic instabilities, and that can cause cancers like cervical cancer, for example. So that's one way you can get these changes to your DNA, which is exposure in the environment. But some people are born carrying genetic changes that increase the risk of this happening. A really good example of that are the BRCA or BRCA genes, which are linked to breast cancer. And we see these carried and run in families. And what sets them apart is that people who carry those genes, if they're going to develop a cancer, often develop that cancer at a younger age than they would otherwise do because of environmental exposures. So yes, there is an example of certain blood-borne cancers, certain blood-type cancers and leukemias, which are linked to genetic changes which you can inherit. And we do see this. And family history is a really good guide. And one of the most important questions a doctor can ask when they see a patient is, does anything run in your family? And all doctors worth their salt will always ask this question, because that's a really good guide towards the sorts of health risks a person may face. And it's useful knowledge to have, because if you do know that there's an excess of certain conditions cropping up in your family, you know to keep an eye on yourself. And the key thing with cancer is early detection, because the evidence is the earlier we pick it up, the better the prospects are under all circumstances, but also the better the chances that it can be completely cured. So the number one thing is, if anything changes, if you develop any kinds of symptoms, then you must always get investigated. And if you are in a position to see someone about this kind of thing, you do have these concerns, always tell them about a family history, because it may well be there is a heritable aspect to some of these things, and that can be considered, and that may guide how a person looks and where they look for certain types of disease.
Let's go to James from Simonstown on the line. Welcome, James. Go ahead for the Naked Scientist.
Good morning. I'm a determinist. I don't believe in would have, could have, might have. I don't believe there's any parallel alternative outcomes. How would Chris describe his views on this subject?
Whoa, this is quite a philosophical question, isn't it, James? What are you saying? Do you think then that basically things just happen because they're going to happen and we can't influence them? That we're just going down the river and we go where the tide takes us? Is that? I'm just trying to make sure I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly.
No, I'm saying imagine the script. Things are written and we have self-will to perform these foretold happenings.
Okay. But we could do. So are you saying we have a choice in the matter then? That we can decide, I will do that or I won't do that? Or are we just basically being carried downstream wherever the current goes, the script, as you put it?
No. In fact, we have a choice, but the choice we make is actually the only choice anybody could make, bearing in mind your upbringing, your character, your surroundings, your genetics. It's a foretold event, but you have free will to make your own decisions.
So do you really have a choice then, do you think? Because if you have free will, but actually you're forced to make certain decisions because of the factors you've outlined, is that really free will then?
This is where your perception comes in.
I don't think I can answer the question, because obviously what you're doing is you're creating a playing field with a certain set of boundaries to it and saying, I have to play on this pitch and I can't depart from it. So it's an important quandary. But where do I stand on this? I think there's a huge amount of randomness, and it's impossible to say that any of this is predicted. But basically the dice are loaded by the choices that we make. Some of them are out of our control. Some of them are someone else's decisions. For instance, my parents decided they were having me, and that's why I'm here. That's out of my control. But what I choose to eat, and therefore what I choose to do with my body and how healthy I am, for example, that's very much within my purview. So it really depends, I think, on the different situations, doesn't it? Some things we can control, some things we can't. But I'm not a philosopher. I can't possibly debate this well enough with you. It's outside of my normal comfort zone.
I love being a fly on the wall of such conversations. Kyle is in Sultana Bay, from an important quandary, I guess, to a reality. Go ahead, Kyle.
Hi, good morning, guys. So I was listening to your previous chat about cancer, and obviously external factors can influence it, like smoking. And I have two questions attached. One is things like washing your hair with soaps, or the soaps that you use in your body on a daily basis. Surely these get absorbed into your body and have potential effects on having a reaction and therefore causing potential cancers in your body. And I just wanted to find out about that. My second question is relating to you were saying about early detection. And is there no system in play where on a yearly basis or on a 6-month basis, humans, we could go for a simple test to be able to just pick up if there are any forms of fluctuation that may alert us to early stages of cancer? I'll listen in on the radio. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Two excellent points. On the first one, which is exposures to things, the answer to this is that if we went back, say, 50 years, people would quite happily fill their house with asbestos and say, this is wonderful, it can't burn, it's really easy to work with, it's a nice strong material, fantastic for building houses. And then we discovered, actually, oh dear, this stuff breaks down into very fine dust particles which form sharp, spindly shaped objects which, when breathed in, get into your lungs and don't come out again. They cause progressive inflammation, fibrosis, mesothelioma, one kind of cancer, and also lung cancer itself. Oh dear. So it's only through being exposed we discovered the link between that particular chemical and a health risk and a health outcome. So it would be wrong of me to say, oh, there's no risk from any of these things, because at the end of the day, we're continuously doing an experiment on the scale of the entire world. Another good example of this are these so-called forever chemicals, perfluorinated alkyl substances, PFASs, the kind of thing you find coating your frying pan, the kind of thing which, when you buy that piece of paper that wraps around your burger from the burger bar and is grease-proof, these chemicals are everywhere. They're all over everything we're using, and everyone said they are so stable, these chemicals, that they can't possibly harm us because they don't break down, they don't interact with biology, so they'll be fine. Now we're discovering that people exposed to lots of these chemicals are developing health problems. There's links to cancer, there's links to infertility, links to a range of health problems. So it's only when we have the exposure, we then discover subsequently at a population level there can be risks attached to it. So the answer to this is watch this space, because although we try very hard to make sure that the things that are used and we're all exposed to as a population are as low risk as we believe they are, we're always keeping an open mind because we could discover new things. Can soaps and cosmetics carry chemicals into the body that give you cancer? Well, if you'd asked that a number of years ago, people would have said no. But now there are companies being sued, including cosmeceuticals and cosmetics companies, that are finding that there are associations, and I'm using that word carefully, associations between the use of their products and certain health problems like cancers. Talcum powders for babies were linked to ovarian cancers. Not sure how exactly the one would cause the other, but there's an association there. Underarm deodorants might be linked to certain bad health outcomes, as well as bad smells. So keep an open mind, but we try to avoid exposures where there may be things where there's a known biologically plausible mechanism by which something could cause a health harm, but obviously that means that we're still open to the possibility there are some things that can harm us that we haven't discovered how they could harm us yet. On the screening side of this, on the screening question, this is really important because we're getting into an era now where this is becoming eminently possible. Historically, we had to wait until someone had some kind of frank disease, and then we could say, right, okay, we've diagnosed this, and now we're going to treat it. A good example of that, breast cancer. We've got really good screening programs for breast cancer, but how do we do it? We do it with things like mammograms. Mammograms are X-rays that look through breast tissue and they can see a tumour, but the tumour's got to be big enough so the mammogram can see it, or the ultrasound that you then confirm it with can see it. What about if we were to detect a molecular fingerprint, which when that cancer is developing or trying to develop, it produces some kind of molecular or chemical fingerprint which we could very sensitively pick up? Would that work? And the answer is we're getting there. There are now tests that you can do on the bloodstream because when you have a cancer somewhere, for example, it does spew out various biochemicals that you shouldn't have in your bloodstream. It will change the levels of other biochemicals relative to each other in very specific ways, and it will churn out bits of DNA that point to where it's come from. And people are now developing tests that will look at blood and can look for these changes beginning to happen, and they're predictive of where in the body, not 100%, but where the origin might be. So we're getting there, but this is hard to do. It's certainly not de rigueur to do this on everybody yet, and we have to be very careful that we don't label people as you're dying of cancer and ruin whatever healthy years left a person has when we can't do anything about the thing that we're picking up. So that's the other thing. We only screen for things we know we can intervene meaningfully and purposefully and do good. But those days are coming, so watch this space.
Comment from Carmen. Chris, it was your choice to be because you beat millions of other sperm cells, organisms to get to the egg. So you come through your parents, not from them. You may want to comment on that. But Conrad says, please ask the naked scientist regarding the new sodium-ion batteries with regard to power savings, if he has researched it yet. Conrad in Heathfield.
I'm not aware of that technology, Conrad. So I tell you what, I'll take that as some homework and I'll have a look for you for next time because I'm not familiar and I don't want to just wave my hands around. So let me have a look. And if you have a reference you'd like me to look at as well, do email it to me. It's chris@thenakedscientist.com. I'll take a look and we can review it together next week.
And on the topic of cancer, tamoxifen is a critical medication for breast cancer. It also carries a risk of uterine cancer. How should I measure that risk?
Well, tamoxifen works by blocking the action of hormones like estrogen hitting breast cells and making them grow. It's a partial agonist, as they call it. The problem is that if you block the estrogen signal in one part of the body, you can affect how other parts of the body respond. So yes, there's no such thing as a free lunch. What you have to weigh up is all drugs have side effects. What's the most important thing to do? Do you want the benefit of the drug or the side effect of the drug to be taken most into account? If you've got a condition that could be life-threatening, but you've got and that's a very real prospect, and you're weighing that up against a theoretical small risk of something that hasn't even happened yet, it's an easy decision to make, isn't it? Where it's less of an easy decision to make is, well, I could take this to prevent a disease I haven't got yet, but it might also cause another disease I haven't got yet. Then it's less clear. And when a doctor is advising on a course of treatment, they're going to be weighing this up. If you take this drug because you have a very real risk of a disease, then this will reduce your very real risk to a smaller level. It might theoretically increase your risk of another condition. Good example of that, aspirin, world's most popular painkiller, an amazing drug that can do all kinds of exciting things like stop Alzheimer's disease, stops cancer recurring, but it saves millions of lives every year from heart attacks and strokes. That's an easy decision to make on the one hand, but on the flip side, aspirin gives you a sore tummy. It can also affect your kidneys and increase the risk of bleeding. So on the one hand, you are saving yourself from one condition, but you are increasing the risk a bit of a whole range of other conditions. So where does that risk lie? Well, if you're at really high risk of a heart attack or a stroke, it's an obvious choice. Where it's less obvious is if the risk is much smaller, and that's where good knowledge and evidence and a skilled clinician can help you.
And I think that kind of sums it up. We are out of time, unfortunately, and so very many questions in. Again, in the literally in the last couple of minutes of the show. It's always ideal for you to get them in a little earlier, and that guarantees that the Naked Scientist will be able to squeeze it into the short time that he has here, only 25 minutes. Thank you, Dr. Chris Smith, Naked Scientist, every Friday just after 9:30. It is nearly 2 minutes to 10 o'clock. News coming your way at the top of the hour, and Tutu Zeloneni is standing by.